Okay, I will start. I'm Danielle Davis. I'm the Technical Services Librarian for York County Libraries, and I'm the current chair of the Cataloging Committee.
Lene Cintron, from Eastern Monroe Public Library, Head of Tech Services.
Jacob Ing. Oh,
I'm Katie Greenleaf Martin. I'm the executive director of the Pennsylvania Integrated Library System. And Jacob, I'm sorry that I interrupted you.
all good, all good. I'm Jacob Ingalls. I'm the copy cataloger at Lackawanna County Library System.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Davis. I'm the project manager for Spark. There are also introductions in the chat, so please take a look at those too. Natalie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Arnold. I'm the Spark Support and Documentation Specialist for PALS.
And we have Annette Cafuso, Technical Services Director at Adams County Libraries, I should say, I guess. I'm not sure. Don't be mad at me, neighbors. Becky from Lower Macungie, cataloger. Mary Beth, my supervisor, at York County Libraries, and Hollis Jacoby, Milton Public Library. Jonathan Moore from Wyomissing. His mic is on the fritz. Jenny from Cambria County Library Technical Services. I don't want to mess up your last name. Debbie Montfleury, Eastern Monroe. Mark Sullivan, Southern Lehigh Public Library. I think we got everyone. Okay. So I guess there's a few things I think to talk about today, but I was just going to let everyone know that because of my workload currently, I've decided that this will be my last meeting as the catalog committee chair. That doesn't mean that I won't be at meetings, or if right before a meeting, if I'm going to be there and there's something that is maybe you're concerned about and you don't feel comfortable talking about it, I'm more than happy to bring it up and start the discussion. I just in case I can't make the meeting or there's stuff going on. And also, I had someone contact me. We're also going to be looking into this punctuation situation. But I had a few people contact me about that. And I was like, oh, I'll let the listserv know right away. And then I had like 4 fires to put out and I never got to it. And I feel bad about that because I want to be able to actually follow through and do my best for everyone. So that being said, the position will be open, but even if we don't have a chair per se, I mean, it would be great to have a chair, but I feel like we still have a really good, group here, and that showing up and talking things out will still be really helpful for all of us. So, okay, I'm gonna start my last official meeting.
Danielle,
yeah,
I just want to thank you so much for your, I think is it 3 years? Two at least?
A little over 2.
A little over 2? Okay. We really appreciate you. We appreciate, I know Jonathan's here as another former chair. Yeah, absolutely. Applause for Danielle. It is the cataloging community is something that requires, you to have a special love and affinity for it. And all of the cataloging committee chairs that I have known in my time, in my 10 years this year with the consortium have had that. And so I want to thank Danielle for continuing that tradition and just being in general a great chair. We'll go ahead and schedule, and I know it's on the agenda today to talk about meeting schedule, and we'll go ahead and schedule the meetings out and we'll do them on the PALS Zoom, the user group Zoom, so those will be set up. The idea of I know being the committee chair can sound kind of scary because it seems like you're the cataloger in chief. and we have like the chairs that we've had have had a lot of experience. It really is the convener of the committee. Like, wouldn't you say, Danielle? Like you're getting everybody together, you're starting the discussion. That's really the important thing. And Danielle, as she said, will be here. We'll, all of the PALE staff will be here. And so we would love to have interest in someone new coming into that role. So if you're interested, please let Danielle know, let us know, let Mark know as the chair of the users group. He's here today. Or if there's someone that you think would be good and you think we should reach out to, please feel free to send us a name.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. And I do have a freakish love of cataloging, which not a lot of people do. But I also would encourage people that may feel that they don't have as much experience, because I think I just emailed Katie yesterday, but I have the OCLC standards up all the time, and I am constantly trying to understand their rules. And I'm like, there's no case for this. And you can dig and dig, but sometimes you just have to go with what would be best practice. Sometimes sometimes it's not as straightforward as it seems. It's like, follow the punctuation rules, and then you're like, which ones? So don't let that scare you. And I would say catalogers are always learning. And also sure, I've cataloged a globe, but it's 7 years ago. I'm going to look at documentation. I'm going to look at and remind myself how to do that. So it's not always up here. It's constant repetition and practice, and just kind of, I guess, loving doing it. So
yeah. And it's the environment. I mean, when I think about the amount of change in cataloging standards in the last couple of years versus like the 10 years before that I was working in libraries, like there's a lot of discussion about how to do things. There's a lot of change. And so you have to love like that learning and that like constant adaptation part of it, because they're going to change the things on you and you've got to adapt.
Yeah, cataloging is very consistent until it's not. And it's not like you get a notice, like, oh, this is changing. So anyway, while it's fresh in my mind, we had some questions about spacing and punctuation in the record. So I'm just gonna use the 300 as an example, but it could really be any of the fields that kind of have the same pattern as a 300. So I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to go to a record I just made not long ago. Yes. Can everyone see?
I'm not seeing your screen.
Let me try again. Okay, looks like I'm successful now.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is a record I did the other day, an original record. And there was, the 264 is a really good example as well, actually. I think that's maybe what we were initially discussing. And I have noticed, and other people had noticed as well, that even in OCLC, some people are putting that space between the end of the B field and the subfield C field, and other people are not. And that it's kind of been consistent even when you're bringing records in from a service like OCLC. The rule for display, so OCLC, I think part of the confusion is they are showing you the way that it should be displayed, but they're not necessarily telling you how it will work in your ILS or what will kind of affect what displays on the screen. And so when you're looking at the flat text here, this punctuation, so you have your colon, subfield B, you have your subfield C here, and I actually see, I have an issue here because my punctuation's not with my C. Now watch me be wrong, because I'm being filmed. What the punctuation in this flat text is doing is creating those spaces, whether you have the space or not, because the system is picking up on that language, right? So I think, say for instance, I think Jacob contacted me and was like, hey, it may have been Jacob, I think, that brought it up, or someone else had noticed it. And I said, oh, I guess you're right. So say you were confused and you went to test it, right? And no matter what you do, whether the space is there or not, in the flat text, it doesn't matter because the punctuation is what's creating that space, right? Now, I would put the space there because that's the way it's supposed to display and will keep you consistent, right? But I think that's why there's been confusion, because if you went in here and tested it, it's going to do the same thing whether you have the space there or not, because it's looking for that language, right? And so it's that punctuation in this case is doing what the enhanced MARC editor does for you already, which it splits those fields out. So I'm going to go up here. Let me see here. I'm going to save what I just did. Get a look at my stat view here. Okay, so you see here that the space is there. Now I'm going to go in and take the space out, and the space will be there. And let's just hope this actually is true, because I've had this happen before where I think something's going to happen. I think I did test it. No. It's still there, I think. Yeah. So basically, the flat text is taking its cue from that punctuation. So I would say that I would always, even if you work in flat text, put that space in there, because then it's kind of present in your mind. But I think with OCLC, it's like this is how it should display. But when you're working in the ILS, it's not always going to be. It's not always going to kind of explain why it behaves like, I guess, why it behaves, if that makes sense. So the rule is you want your space between that punctuation. If you test it though, like I did, I was like, I think sometimes remind myself I'd go in and test it and be like, well, oh yeah, it works. I guess there's no space, but it works either way in flat text. So does that make sense, or does that sound crazy? Okay. Thank you. And I do not use the enhanced MARC editor that much, so I am not as well versed on it as some people. But what's nice about it is that it's giving you all those options already. You don't have to think about, there's my, okay, oh, I have to remember this space and that. It's built in for you. So if you're worried about something like that, as long as you fill your data in properly, it's going to kind of give you guidance where you're kind of going through each thing. And we also have those MARC record templates too, if you're working on an original record, or when you create a new record, we have those the drop down menu with templates, book, AD materials, stuff like that you can also use as a guide. So let me see here. I'm going to stop sharing. Wait a minute. Do I need to correct my record? Yeah.
Danielle, can you go back over that? So I guess basically, you want the comma directly after subfield B, not directly before subfield C?
No, it should be directly before. I guess what I'm saying is that the punctuation is always going to be before that subfield and the letter, right?
But it's a space that you were kind of focusing on.
Yes. So so basically, for it to behave correctly, even in this state, you've got to have your punctuation with your subfield C, right? There always has to be punctuation preceding.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm demoing though is that in the flat text, the reason that there seems to be inconsistency with the way people are cataloging is because in the flat text, it's reading that punctuation and interpreting it. So when it displays, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And in the flat text, that's what's kind of triggering that space. You know, if you think of it kind of as a command language or, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, if you're seeing it inconsistent, it's probably because of things like this, where if you like, I catalog in flat text a lot. So that kind of stuff I might not catch or think about as often because I'm not in the enhanced editor a lot, you know, where so and I did ask Chance, who does our copy cataloging, and he said that he was seeing a lot of it just coming in from OCLC, like space and no space. So I think it was confusing because, you know, you have really good catalogers doing both. And I think because they're testing it in flat text and they're like, oh, that's the right answer because it looks good, you know, but so does that make sense?
So if we see the space, don't fix it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be there in the display. And honestly, I would say that, say you're working in flat text, I would say it's always a good practice to build those spaces in, make sure they're there anyway, because you want to think about how you want it to look in the catalog. And I feel like for people that are learning, and also just to have that kind of built in, you want that space there. So it's not going to hurt anything in flat text. But I think we were seeing that phenomenon because if it runs together in flat text, it doesn't display as a problem, right?
Right.
So I would say that when you look at the OCLC standards and you're looking at, you know, your 264, your 300, you know, where they put that spacing is this is how it's supposed to display. But I would say, depending on how I think it's just if you work in flat text a lot, it might not be something you pick up on because the display still works, right? So, but if I was learning, or I was new to original cataloging, or if I was new to editing records, I would want to practice that and, you know, make sure that you have that spacing there, because that way, no matter what, even if you're working in another ILS or anything else, it's going to be consistent and you know that you want that space there, you know.
And does OCLC have a breakdown of this? Because you're saying 264 and 300. Is there anywhere else that we should?
It's either one. It's really like wherever you see that punctuation. I was seeing most issues in the 300 and the 264, the first 264 field. I apologize for that.
That's okay. Well, because I'm just seeing like there's punctuation in the 100, there's punctuation in the 700, there's punctuation in the 490. Like wherever we see that, we want to build in a space.
I would say yes. Yeah, because that, although, you know, the 655, that's the subfield 2 can occur outside of a normal cataloging. Like that's something that if you went through authority control or validation of subject headings, that could appear automatically through that process. But generally speaking, now you do have like the 800, I haven't looked into it. I've always seen it kind of A and B run together, but I'm going to be honest with you. I am so used to doing it that way that I don't know. Like, you know, but I'm thinking, let's see what happens if I split it up. With a period, I do think it would behave different, but let's see. I'm just going to do this real quick. See what our display looks like. I think it's pulling in the 490 anyway, and not the 8. I think that is maybe that's how I haven't just discovered it. Is that, I feel like that's kind of been the how it's been going for a while, right? That the system tends to pull in the 490, because I have the indicator that says there is an 800 field, but it still seems to pull in the 490. So I think that might be something that's kind of a long-standing issue, that the 800s should be lining up because they're the authorities and the 490s are as written in the book. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not but the 490 is displaying and not the 800. So I'm going to go and look it up. The OCLC instructions are not, they're not, like the one thing they don't do is put the punctuation at the end of the field if you're looking at the examples. So like there's not periods at the end of the fields when there should be. But let me go and look and see. I have a feeling that it should display normally, but I feel like the periods in the 800s are breaks that it does run together. And I'm just guessing. But what I would say is that, now see, I have my, yeah, so what I would say is though, is that as far as the fields that were causing us trouble, I'll look into the 800 because honestly, I haven't really thought about it. Let's look at the, enhanced MARC editor and see what we see here. I'm going to have to look into the periods that are mid-string because I feel like those might not have spaces between them, but I'm going to make sure. But as far as, so this is kind of a little bit tricky. I don't have all the answers either, but what I can say is we know that in our 264, our 300, even in the 100, you know, when you're in flat text, that subfield E author, that comma after that you see displaying right now after Ellen, that comma is actually, there's not a space there either. And it doesn't, it's not going to change anything if that space is there or not. And you see the display hasn't changed. So I put the comma in there, or yeah, I made the space in there, sorry. And it's not, nothing has changed. I'm just going to refresh it just to make sure. Yeah. So if you're using the wizard, you have built-in guidance. And if you are in flat text, putting those spaces in there is not, is the way it should be displaying. And also the way it should be displaying is the way you want it to be, obviously, right? So even though this seems to work, I feel like if you want to be consistent and you want to remember the rules and always put that space in there. I know it's a little confusing, but does this make more sense? I will look into anything I'm not sure about because I haven't thought about some of this for a while.
And
Danielle, oh, go ahead, Katie.
No, well, I was going to say, I think one of the, just for the notes, one of the takes homes is if you're working in the advanced editor, it's not something that you need to spend time fussing about. And Natalie did find some other examples, so go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, because I was looking on OCLC and not to throw a wrench into any of this, but just, I guess, more clarification, where you mentioned in the 264 with the punctuation, how it should go with the subfield C. I've always done it the opposite, like the subfield B, I would put the comma after and then start the, subfield C. And in the OCLC 264 examples, I'm still seeing that. So do you know where exactly, here, I can share, I'll just share. It won't let me do it. Give me 1 second. I'll drop the link of what I'm seeing so it makes more sense. So if you go to that OCLC link and then go down to the subfield C description, in each of the examples, it still shows the comma with displaying with the subfield B. Now, is that just the way it's going to display? That's the way I've always taken it, as the way it should be manually typed in versus just the way the system is going to display it? Or am I not?
I think what it and it is confusing because it doesn't show you, but I think it's showing you the way the system should display it, which that is what you would see on the screen. It is confusing. I mean, that's what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, because like you said, either way you do space, no space, the system still knows to display it the way it's supposed to display.
The punctuation guide, okay, Jacob says, even the punctuation guide at the bottom specifies comma space rather than space comma. We may never know. Yeah, I think I do think that there is an issue in the flat text because I feel that when one of these things is done, I think we've seen some things that almost seem like they're pushed out of alignment or something's a bit wrong with those fields, if I'm thinking about it. But I think also the guide in OCLC is going to tell you what the display should look like. So I would say that if the majority of your copy cataloging and you're editing minimally in flat text, or you are editing in the enhanced MARC editor, this shouldn't be a problem because it will guide you. But I ran into this because I kind of dug into it. I'm gonna have to look back because I had an email exchange with someone in the committee about this, and I actually spent a good bit of time thinking about it, but it's been a minute. I know it's confusing, but where the punctuation is in the flat text does matter. Whether the space is there or not isn't as important. So that punctuation that's touching that subfield needs to be with that subfield, or I believe it will display wrong. So, and OCLC is telling you this is how it should display. But you also notice with OCLC, they don't put a period at the end of fields that should have periods and things like that you know are right? And so you second guess yourself, well, maybe there's not a period at the end of this field. And then you read the instructions and it's like, well, follow the punctuation rules, and you follow the link and you're like, I guess that's for everything, or I don't know. So I can fool around a little bit more with it because I don't want to confuse you guys. But I think what I'm saying is the spacing is not an issue in the flat text. It will display the way it should in those fields because it's picking up on the punctuation. But my understanding is that the one time that it won't is if you're in flat text, like the whole thing that makes that space appear is that say that comma in front of that subfield C, those touching is what is creating that space in flat text, right? And that does that make sense? If they're not grouped together and it's touching, I feel like I could be wrong though. Like I feel like, but I do feel like that punctuation is what's causing that space in flat text. It's displaying, that's a break in the display. So whereas it's in flat text, you could do it as a string or you could put the spaces in. And as long as the punctuation is touching the field it's supposed to touch in flat text, it will still express itself properly when it's displayed. That being said, you can see how confusing this is. But I think of it like a command language, right? So all of those indicators are doing something. You're putting in stuff that is not, it doesn't express itself. Like you don't read it and go, oh, okay, there's a space there, or there's 4 spaces, between THD space and the next word. So, when I think of it like a command language, I'm thinking, well, what is it asking for, right? Or what does it need to display this on the other side? So, but I'm trying to think of, no, but I think if you look at the top of if you do your own, say you have your own record that you've been working on and you do your own experiment, say with the 264, the 300, I know at least with the 264 that if you do it all run together or you do it with the spaces before the punctuation, it is going to display the same. And I would say that I would follow the rule of display. It doesn't hurt anything to do that. And then you're keeping in mind the way it should display. Okay. This isn't like a super easy thing because OCLC does not explain. And it took me a little bit to realize OCLC is showing me the display. People have different ILSs and different ways of cataloging or different, Some of us don't use flat text at all, others, that's all we do. It's showing us what the end result should look like in the catalog. That's what I believe I'm seeing. Does that make sense? That being said, you can put the spaces in there and have it be identical. If you're in flat text, have it be identical to what's displayed. Punctuation. Does anybody want to reel me in?
Would it help if we kind of convene a little subcommittee to do some testing and we come up with the cheat sheet? Like, this is what you need. This is how it will display, but this is how you need to enter it. And then that way and we can reference the OCLC stuff. Because like you said, it doesn't seem very clear with the OCLC either. And we may be going down quite a rabbit hole.
I would say that the majority of the people in this committee, like say Jonathan's confused, but Jonathan produces beautiful records. So whatever Jonathan's doing is working, right? So I think that people are confused because it's like, well, where do I put this? And I was seeing one thing in our catalog and another thing in OCLC, at least in flat text. I shouldn't say the catalog, working in flat text. If you don't work in flat text a lot, this is not going to be something that you should agonize over. I just see it like, I think of it like, I don't know how many of us are old enough to have played around with DOS computers. Elizabeth, thank you. Thank you, Katie, okay. So everything was like a command, right? And so I guess I think of it like that punctuation is telling the system to do something. But in the flat text, it's like, and so when you're in the wizard, or I call it the wizard, the enhanced editor, and I'm sure the Pale staff is like, she's talking about the wizard again, like the magical thing. OPAC.
I know what you meant.
You guys should have like an airbrush wizard van that you guys drive around with, like the Pales crew. That would be kind of cool. Yeah. So I guess I think of it like that. Like if I don't do this command, or if that command isn't in there somewhere, this won't display on the side that most people are looking at properly. I don't know. But let's have a subcommittee. But I think too, we're over engineering it. I think it's safe to say that the punctuation touching the field it's supposed to be next to, or the field that it's in front of, I think is what makes that space happen. If you did a run on field in the 264, it would still display exactly as it's supposed to. If you put the space in there, it's still going to display exactly as it's supposed to. So I would say that I would follow the rules of display if they work, just because it's consistent and you don't have to think about it. But let's go. I just feel like there's certain things that should be easy to figure out, and if you go into you're going to go right in the rabbit hole. Also, you know what? I have written the Library of Congress and gotten an answer back before. Maybe this is that level. But I also got back, what? You can do what you want, just be consistent the last time. So I was like, oh, okay, they don't have everything figured out either, right? So we'll figure it out, but I think the majority of you are doing a good job and you're doing it correctly. I just saw some anomalies in the catalog where it looked like maybe the punctuation wasn't on the right. It was touching the field before it instead of the field after it. And so you would see things displaying that really shouldn't have been in display. And I thought maybe that was why. So we don't have to have the answer today. Sorry if I confused all of you more than I hoped. Lene, I see your smile. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions that I may not be able to answer? Now, are you ready for something that people do know about, which is, do you guys want to talk about the KPAC?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm excited.
They've got some real answers here. So
can I share my screen? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me talk about this today. So with our upgrade this fall, we're going to get a newly revamped, revitalized, redesigned a little bit KPAC. For libraries that don't use it, this is a children's designed catalog. It has graphics for getting into specific topics, and you can search by age group, so the audience field in the record, and then very basic searches, so word, title, or author. So with this remodeling, these topics here are all up for grabs. So due to we're still waiting on one piece of development, but so for right now, this will be a shared group of topics. So like all Spark libraries who are going to use the KPAC will have the same topics and the same graphics and things. And then with additional development, we'll be able to customize them per library. So I used to work in youth services, so I have a fairly decent idea of what I think would be great in an OPAC, but I would love some staff from volunteers from the cataloging committee to help curate this a little bit better. We have the option of doing title level, so you could do animals. Oh, let me get one that has like subfields. So this one is like award winners. So we can have award winners, and then we can have all the different awards that are out there. They can be curated by searches, by book lists, things like that. So anyone who's interested, please let me know. And we can get that conversation started so that we have some topics to go when we launch the Evergreen OPAC back with those libraries later this fall or later this summer. And they even have graphics for all of them, so we don't have to come up with pictures or anything. So, and then if your library has youth services staff that want to help participate in this, I know it's a little tricky at the moment because of summer reading, but we'll have like a discussion board and we can discuss how you want to structure them all. Any questions on the KPAC? Anyone really excited about joining us to pick topics?
We can put out a call in the weekly highlights. And so if you have maybe some folks at your libraries that are more engaged in, like youth services collection development people would be perfect because they're seeing the records, they're seeing the things that they're buying and if they want to feature, or even anybody who's like really good at displays, to think about, some of the things that they think would be cool to feature. And it will be obviously across the consortium, but just to get some feedback on what people think.
So related to this is since you can do searches by age group, we definitely need to make sure that the records have an audience filled in, because if they don't, then the items will not appear in the KPAC. So as you're cataloging things, just keep an eye and make sure that you're supplying the audience value. We have, I think, included preschool, primary school, tween, teen, and juvenile. We can remove the teen if you folks feel that's appropriate. I know it is kind of kiddish, a little juvenile more than teens probably want to admit, but we have that flexibility. So that group who would be talking about the KPAC can decide that as well. So we will be doing some reports cleanup or record cleanup, and I'm going to hand that over to Katie to talk about.
Quick
So
question.
yeah.
Sorry, for when you choose general, would that where does that go?
That does not appear in the KPAC. It has to be
because I'll choose that like if I'm doing a library of things and it's like something that everybody can have fun with. I just use general.
Yeah.
I just
I don't think
general would show.
not here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in here.
Good.
The adult, general, specialized, think there's maybe one more that are not going to show in the KPAC.
Okay, but then if I do have like Tonys and Yotos, I
Yeah.
think I put them in as J, but I'll have to go back and just make sure.
Yeah, that would be worth checking. Or like if you have board games, so
Yeah.
you got, your chutes and ladders, and you want those to display. One of the things that we also learned is that serial records don't have an audience field. So serial records are not going to display in the KPAC, and that maybe something that we can talk about development for, but we just figured it out. And I don't know where we'd pull that from if it like there's no audience, right? So um that was this week's or last week's sticky wicket. We're like, oh,
No Ranger Ricks for you. So yeah.
we have the Ranger Rick books, but not the Ranger Rick magazine. So there are still some hiccups. Other questions about what's featured in there and what's not? So what I would like to recruit some folks for is that Pales has the ability to bring on people either as independent contractors, if this is something that if you're thinking to yourself, I have some free time, and do you know what I would like to do with that free time? Improve MARC records. And I think that to myself, well, I don't think that I have free time, but it's we can either, if you is okay with your employer that you contract out in your own time, we're happy to contract with folks as individuals. And if you are an individual who works for a library and your library would be interested in entering into an agreement with Pales for us to reimburse your library for some of your time, we can do either of those setups and then have you work on these things, and get either have you or your library be compensated for that, depending on how the setup is. We've done this with a number of folks over the years, and it's been really successful for us. So just let us know if you're interested, if that's something that you think that either you'd be interested in as an individual or your library, and we will talk about the details and how it works. And it's honestly like when I have like 10 minutes in between things, I love nothing more than to improve a couple of MARC records and feel just like I have made that tiny corner of the universe that much better. So it would be a good thing for somebody who some of these records are ones that like have ISBNs and they just need to be overlaid. So people who are trying to build experience, we could kind of cater it that way, or people who have original cataloging experience, there's lots of demand for that as well. So please let us know if you're interested.
Thanks. Were there any questions on this before we move forward? Okay. Z39.50. Somebody actually asked in the Evergreen community for a list of servers that people were using, and I went through ours and tested them all, and I found a few that are not working. So let me get that list up. It includes Boulder, Michigan State University, Milwaukee Public Library, OhioLink, University of Minnesota, and Biblios. I did a couple searches for our good friend James Patterson and was unable to find things. I did other searches as well for the academic libraries, just in case they don't have James Patterson. So I did not find results for any of those. So does anyone use those sources with success?
Can you repeat them, please?
Boulder, Michigan State University, Milwaukee Public Library County CAT is the full name, OhioLink, University of Minnesota MNCAT, and Biblios.net. I'll put them in the chat. Concern is that that screen is pretty long, and if we can remove some that are not working, that would be probably helpful for those who are new to using that screen. So we don't have to decide anything today, but if anybody wants to, okay, so medicine's not getting results any longer. Okay.
When I had the same thing about OhioLink, and when I went to their website, it looks like they changed ILS providers, and there's like you can go to any of the individual libraries, but there isn't a public interface for their union catalog. So it does not surprise me that the 950 switch is not working,
Okay.
and that's no longer something. So that definitely one that used to yield good records. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
Okay. Well, we can put it in the notes, and I'll send out an email and just confirm with everyone before I delete them.
Okay.
So that way you're not looking for something, or if you have them as a default search, we can get that updated for you. And then the only other thing was monthly meetings. We were kind of pitching the idea of a working meeting where we just have a standing meeting every month for the cataloging committee, so people can drop in and ask questions, or if you have something to work on, like cleaning up records, or if you have questions about like the spacing or punctuation or anything like that. We thought we could host them, and Spark staff would moderate, and then if anyone had a topic they wanted to present, they could do so at that time and kind of get some feedback. If not, we don't have to do that, but we just thought it might be helpful to folks. And that's all we have. That's all I have. I don't know if Katie has anything else.
Yeah.
Can we get like how do people could people maybe like vote in the chat or do like the thumbs up, thumbs down emojis for like how do you feel about having a monthly meeting where it would be more of office hours or cataloging hang, like come with your questions. If people don't have questions, then we'll like okay, let's take a look at the KPAC topics. Let's get into this punctuation thing. Like there's always a list of things that we can kind of go down the rabbit hole.
I
So
guess. Just wondering with summer and could it start like after summer? I don't know how busy with vacation. I don't know. I just didn't
yeah,
know what the timing was. So,
we what do you think, Elizabeth? We could start it. I mean, it's not like it's going to be mandatory, so we can start it
okay.
whenever. And just if people are not,
All right.
it's
Yeah.
never like you're going to be in trouble for not
Yeah.
coming.
Okay.
I do want to make sure we have the KPAC topics before the end of October set, because that's when people will be moving to the Evergreen OPAC. So that is a more time sensitive subject. But the monthly meetings could be whenever.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I still had, like, Jacob had another question. The Library of Congress is not just working on subject headings. They're also, just a heads up, they are also basically have decided to get rid of the subfield B form in the subject heading field, or the subject headings, I should say, fields. So I haven't dug into that far, but I don't feel that at this point there's a general best practice. I have noticed subject headings over the years appearing that would intend to say baseball stories instead of baseball subfield fiction or juvenile fiction or something like that. I have seen changing subject headings that, would kind of suggest fiction without it having to be explicitly stated with a subfield B. But I think it's still, they can say something, but it being used in practice and actually being adopted and done is a whole other ball of wax. So I think there's also some groups that are actually challenging this change. And so I would personally have to do much more reading on it. But I think basically what they're trying to do is using a combination of the subjects, of the LC subjects in the 650, and then using it with the 655. You could do a search string that, say you do subject keyword search, you could do a search in there that would bring back those elements together that would kind of make the subfield be, this is what I think they're going for, that you wouldn't need the subfield B. As of this point, though, to me, I'm trying to think of where else that would be in the record, like explicitly stated, like this is fiction or nonfiction. I mean, and if you're doing very general things in the 655, like you can just put fiction there. But to me, it's also kind of in the leader, it's very important, you know, to have fiction or nonfiction at least separated. So at least it's kind of broken out in the catalog. But I don't have a handle on this yet. I've been kind of playing around with not adding subfields to my subject headings and thinking about how they would come back in a search. So it's kind of a behemoth. Bye, Lene.
Bye.
That's in motion, and we just maybe have to keep tabs on it because it's not like they'll put out a full manual like how to do this. I'm hoping they do, but I feel like it's probably more up in the air than that. And then we still didn't really have time to talk about our AI records. Our not AI records, I'm sorry, identifying AI materials in general. Maybe one of the monthly meetings could be on that. I do have I had to show you guys this. I'm going to do what I see influencers do, because sometimes when I put something in front of my camera, it doesn't display properly. Let's see. You put your hand behind it like the makeup girls do to show you makeup and stuff. Can you see that? It's called making beer at home. Okay. So this one was really good. There's all kinds of funny things in here. Your first warning should be that it refers to the United States constitutions, plural. Okay, that's your first sign that something's wrong. Also, with nonfiction, if you have a suspicion, please look at it. This book also talks about while you're making your beer, you can keep your kids busy by letting them make soda. Now, it sounds completely innocent until they tell you to put yeast in the soda and let it sit for 2 weeks. That sounds like you're making beer for your kids. So, and it does tell you to do that in this book. I'm going to keep a close watch on this one, but one thing that, you know, you can do a little more it could be enjoyable if you look at the Amazon reviews for some of these. Like it's really hard to, you know, look at all these things, and it definitely is slowing down our the production line in tech services because we're catching all of these things. Also, this was from Ingram. So Ingram, we have vendors actually selling this stuff. They have their own self-pub kind of platform. So we told our selectors, hey, be careful on Amazon, but all this stuff is now on regular vendors and they're not vetting. This one's particularly bad, but I also have this beekeeping for beginners. It looks completely innocent, but then after you get through the book, you know what it tells you at the end? Maybe you should talk to a beekeeper. I'm thinking that, well, that's probably correct. And the reviews, I think my coworker picked out a particularly good one. I think this was written by a 6th grader. And I think that's giving this author a little too much credit. And then, so this is kind of how you identify these things. There's going to be lots of bullet points and all kinds of fun stuff. This is the guide to home canning. They tell you that when you're done with this book, you'll know everything A to Z about home canning. But if you look through it, they don't tell you how to sterilize your jars. And there's recipes in there. And Chance told me that this pickle recipe is absolute garbage. That's never going to work. So sometimes you have to depend on your coworkers. So, you know, I feel like a lot of these books go in circles and they don't really say anything. But the Constitution, that's a huge red flag. So unfortunately, it takes time to look through these things and vet them. But just to give you a heads up, they are coming from legitimate vendors. So unfortunately. Do we have any questions or comments?
I think having that as the first meeting would be very helpful, and everyone can bring an example, a show and tell, if you will, and then it help facilitate conversation on how you folks want to approach like policies about documenting in the records and such.
We're still working on it. We had someone come to YCL maybe at the end of last year, beginning of this year, to kind of talk to us about it. And they said we were being really proactive and doing a lot more than most, but I also feel like we have centralized cataloging. So we're gonna pick up these patterns, whereas if you have more like a dispersed system, it might not become apparent right away. So, but we're still completely in the stage of trying to document so we can give our selectors education. So all of these fabulous books will be in some kind of presentation form eventually, so we can kind of let people know what's going on. But it's really slow moving, and it's changing so quickly that it's kind of difficult to keep up. So we're just trying to, I think once we get the initial documentation in place, then it's going to be a little easier to manipulate. So that's that. And then I also just want to leave us with addressing the punctuation very concisely. Yes, Jonathan, the space should be there. So the space should be there in the display, and I would say maybe there's some little wonky magic happening, but put it in the, if you're working in flat text, leave it there too. No, it's good time. So anyway, anything else before we go? I can't believe we talked about that in an hour. Oh, thanks guys for the thank yous. I'm sorry that I think I just confused this more than anything, but that's kind of my way.
It's the way of the cataloger. There's always nuance. There's always, well, that, like it depends on this. So
I heard that there's rules. I would just like to have know what they are so I can just execute easily identifiable rules. Well, I just wanted to thank all of you for coming to the meeting and letting me be crazy cataloger lady. And I've really enjoyed my time as chair, and I'm happy to keep working with all of you and see all of you soon. And I will figure out who I'm going to ask about this. So maybe they'll see, but I don't know. I don't know what I'll get back from them, but we'll figure it out. Okay. Bye guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone.